Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we are going to present a guidebook that use portfolio as alternative assessment by using English subject. So as you can see, this e-guidebook provides a structured framework for implementing portfolio assessment in English classes. It focuses on measuring students' progress in reading comprehension and writing skills over time, while encouraging reflective learning and learner autonomy. Meaning that by moving away traditional assessment, traditional one-off exams, this e-guidebook allows for a longitudinal views of students in learning English. By the end, students will be able to demonstrate improvement in reading comprehension by accurately identifying main ideas, supporting details, inferences, and vocabulary in a variety of texts, as evidenced through annotated readings and comprehension tasks collected in their portfolio. Second, students will be able to produce written texts with improved clarity, organization, grammar, and vocabulary, showing clear development from initial drafts to final versions, as demonstrated through multiple writing samples and revisions included in the portfolio. And third, students will be able to critically reflect on their own reading and writing development, identifying strengths, challenges, and strategies for improvement through guided reflective entries included in their portfolio. Now let's take a look at the flow or an overview of how this assessment works. As you can see, there are three parts, but before the first part, the students gonna have self-assessment 1, where they gonna have to answer all the reflection questions based on their own experiences. Then, when it comes to part 1, they're gonna have comprehension test 1, writing test 1, and then second self-assessment. We are going to get deeper after this. Then, when it comes to part 2, the student's gonna have to go comprehension test 2, writing test 2, and third self-assessment. And then going on with part 3, the student's gonna have comprehension test 3, writing test 3, and final self-assessment. So this is where students have to describe how their reading skills have improved.
Now, my name is MOHD bin Choma. My metric number is 2318059. Now, continue after the flow as we have seen before, which is the first self-assessment. And this self-assessment, first assessment need to be answered before we start with our part, our phase, our test and our question. So for self-assessment, we have 4 questions for the student to answer, and based on their own experience in learning reading comprehension and writing skill in English language. The first one is, how confident are you in reading English text? Second, what difficulty do you usually face when reading? How confident are you in reading, right, in writing in English? And what do you want to improve most this term? And as you can see in this question, there are several important things that students need to answer. The first one is about their own strengths and weakness in the skill of reading comprehension and writing. And student also need to know their own confident, their own level of their own skill. So when they know the skill in this first assessment, it will be helpful for them to set their own goal and to know their own strengths and weakness that they can use and they can improve when they do the test and when they reflect back in the next self-assessment. After the student finish answering the first self-assessment, they will start with the part 1. But it must be explained here that it does not mean after the student answer the self-assessment, first assessment, they are required to take the comprehension test and writing test immediately. But it can be given to them after maybe a series of 2 or 3 class of teacher instructing in teaching them how to comprehend what they are reading, and also how to write an essay English. Only then the test or question can be given to them for them to answer. This is the comprehension test 1, CT1. And as you can see in CT1, the question is very direct, the question is very brief. main purpose to detail in which the question, the answer for this question can be found immediately in the stimulus tag, and a little bit of question that require the student to test their own inference making skill. For example, the fifth and the fourth question. But this question, the first question, is still in the level of testing, knowing the foundation, the baseline of the student in reading comprehension skill. And this is writing test 1, WT1. As you can see, the question required for the student to write a simple paragraph about 80 to 100 words, and the requirement is very low, at least 3 detail, using linking word, and with sentence with a certain conclusion why this place is important to you. And I've said it earlier, in this test, this is not mean that teacher, after the student answer their first self-assessment, student are required to immediately answer the first test, but it can be through after a few series of teaching. So maybe the teacher can teach about how to make how to create a little bit of idea, main point, and also how to use the linking word. So this is for the writing test 1. CT1, writing, or WT1 for part 1, in which to see, to gauge the student baseline, student foundation of reading comprehension skill and writing skill. After the student answers self-assessment 1, CT1, comprehension test 1, writing test 1, then the student need to answer this part, which is self-assessment 2. As you can see in self-assessment 2, which question were easiest or hardest, what do you do well in writing, what feedback do you receive, one improvement goal for the next task. And the after the student finish the part 1, which is CT1 and WT1, the teacher must give a reflective feedback for the student to know what they can improve, and what can they reflect back on their own skill of comprehension and writing skill. And in self-assessment, as you can assessment 2, as you can see, the student start to see a little bit of room that they need to improve in their own skill, like setting improvement goal for the next task. This is very important because in the next self-assessment, the student will also do the same, answering the question in which they need to compare and their own progress from the test 1, test 2, and test 3. And this self-assessment 2 part, and is very important for them to answer it.
This part 2 is development task focuses on skill improvement of students, which are comprehension test 2 and writing test 2. In this comprehension test 2, students read a more challenging text which titled Why Reading is Important, and answer question that test vocabulary in context, inference, and personal opinion. This directly supports the learning outcome of improving reading comprehension across text types. In terms of validity, this task accurately measure reading comprehension because the questions are directly derived from the text and require students to demonstrate an understanding of meaning, ideas, and imply information. The task assesses the exact skills state in the learning outcome that ensure strong construct validity. Regarding reliability, the assessment uses clearly structured questions and standardized marking criteria that allow different students to be evaluated consistently. The writing task requires students to write 120 to 150 words explaining the importance of reading in English using feedback from part 1. This ensures validity because the task directly measures writing development in terms of organization, clarity, and language use. Reliability in comprehension and writing tests is maintained because the same rubric and marking criteria are applied consistently to all students. Now we look at self-assessment 3. This assessment allows students to evaluate progress. Students reflect on whether reading has become easier, how their writing has improved, and how they apply the teacher's feedback. This step strengthens formative assessment because students connect feedback with actual improvement. This part 3 is different from part 2 in terms of consolidation tasks, which are comprehension test 3 and writing test 3. In this comprehension test 3, students read a longer and more complex text with title Students and Reading Habits and answer higher order questions that require critical thinking and personal responses. This aligns strongly with the learning outcome of advanced reading comprehension. The writing task is a 180 to 220 word argumentative essay where students agree or disagree with a statement and support their ideas with reasons and examples. This task is valid because it measures higher level writing skills such as coherence, argumentation, and vocabulary range. Reliability is ensured through the use of a detailed rubric that standardizes assessment across students. Last but not least, final self-assessment. This completes the portfolio cycle. Students describe how their reading skills have improved, compare their first and final writing tasks, identify the skills that improve the most, and set future English learning goals. This step is essential for lifelong learning as it encourages goal setting and self-direct improvement. It is valid because it measures long-term learning growth and reliable because all students follow the same reflection structure. In conclusion, each test and self-assessment step in this portfolio is designed to support learning, provide meaningful feedback, and measure progress accurately. Together, these steps ensure strong alignment with the learning outcomes while maintaining validity, reliability, and fairness in assessment.
Okay, now let's move on to the rubric. This portfolio assessment rubric carries a total of 100 marks and consists of 4 main components. The first one is reading comprehension progress, 30%, writing quality and improvement, 40%, reflection and self-assessment, 20%, and organization and completeness, 10%. So each component has its own rubric. So we have 4 rubric, and all of the rubric we use the holistic scoring type of rubric for each section. And the rubric presents 4 levels of achievement. The first one is excellent, good, satisfactory, and weak. For each level of achievement, a specific mark range is provided. For example, 25 to 30 marks is for excellent level of achievement, and each level is accompanied by a clear descriptors that explain the expected performance, and the rubric helps students to understand the assessment criteria and expectation clearly, while also supporting teachers in evaluating students' performance accurately and consistently. So, for the conclusion, this portfolio assessment is suitable for students to achieve the intended learning outcomes as it helps improve reading comprehension and writing skills through structured and progressive tasks. It serves as an effective alternative assessment because it is guided by clear learning outcomes, supported by a well-defined rubric, and implemented through a systematic assessment process. The portfolio includes a strong feedback system in which both teachers and students are involved. The teachers provide written feedback while students engage in self-assessment, allowing continuous improvement. And in addition, the tasks in the portfolio are reliable and valid as they are designed based on CEFR, aligned with the international examination standards.